Hi, my name is Olga. I live in Berlin and I work in OptioPay as a lead software engineer. OptioPay is a fintech company in Berlin. And I am also a CTO and co-founder of EdEra. I don't know if you know about it, but it's an online educational project based in Kiev. We exist for 3 years and we provide creative solutions for education in Ukraine. So today the topic of my talk is how I manage time and try to stay fit with Vue.js. So I'm going to talk about ProfitOro, which is a small application that helps to manage time and try to stay fit. And since we are talking about managing time, let me click on this timer, invisible button. Yeah, so it will start counting down. So what is ProfitOro? ProfitOro is a small application that has been developed as a part of the book. This book has not been yet published. This is my second book. And I decided that before talking about ProfitOro itself and the technologies behind it, probably it would be interesting to talk about the whole history of writing books and why and how this happened, because a lot of people ask me why did you write the book, what happened. So to show demystify this mystery, I will first let you know how did this happen, how I wrote my first book about Vue.js, and then I will talk about ProfitOro itself, and then I will talk about the technologies that ProfitOro is based on. Yeah, so let's go. So first, how I wrote a book about Vue.js. This book. I'm not any Vue.js guru. Let me ask you a question. How many of you think of yourself as a guru of something? Yeah, I see one guru here. That's great. When I made this question on Vue.js Conf, I asked how many of you think of you as a Vue.js guru? No one raised his hand, even you didn't raise his hand, and he created Vue.js. So I'm not any Vue.js guru, but still I wrote this book. And how did this happen? So once I received this email from Pact Publishing asking me if I would be interested in writing a book about Vue.js. And I said, what the fuck? Me writing a book about Vue.js? I even forwarded this email to my husband, telling him this. But then I started to think, and I've been thinking for the whole one day, and I thought, well, I already have a child, she's there. I even planted some trees, so probably for having the complete fulfillment of my purpose of living, I have to write a book. So I answered them positively, and I started with this. We signed a contract, we defined the deadlines for each chapter, so my big interesting journey has started. It's interesting, it's nice, sometimes it's frustrating, but it's very interesting because you learn a lot, and you have this iterative process with your editors. Still, of course, I was really, really nervous. But if you have family support or friends who support you, everything is so easy. So each chapter I would give to my husband before sending to my publisher for him to fix my fantastic English articles, this kind of things. And when I handed him my first chapter, I was so nervous. I thought, well, he will tell me, what is this? You cannot write English, you cannot write technical books, it's stupid, it does not make any sense. But actually, after reading the first chapter, he told me, now I want to learn Vue.js. Guys, my husband is a back-end engineer, like real hardcore back-end engineer. So it was really huge motivation for me. And with each chapter, it started to get better and better. And everything was really, really good and nice. I was in a nice space for my schedule with my deadlines, and probably it's a good idea to tell what is the book about. So basically, my approach is to not just inject some technology to the readers, because it doesn't make any sense. The reader wants to build something and to see something functional. So we start from scratch, and we developed a very simple application until its deployment stop. And it goes through testing and CI/CD stuff, so people can see how to really build some software, even if it's just a small example for the book. And it was a good approach, and everybody loved it, editors and reviewers. And it was almost the last chapter, and then the problems, right? This was my problem. So while I was writing the book, Vue 2.0 was not out yet. So I was writing everything as previous version. And I was, through the whole book, I was telling something like, well, now it's like this, but then when Vue.js 2.0 will be out, it will be like that. And when it was out, my publisher asked me to rewrite everything. And I said, man, it does not make any sense. Like, you were aware of this, you were aware that I was writing in the past, or no, in the present for that time. Why didn't you tell me anything? So I had to rewrite everything. It was frustrating, it was complicated, complicating, and yeah, but I finished it. And one day it was published, and it was me being really happy. And then even more surprises came. So I've been interviewed by the Best Programming Books website, and all of a sudden ended up top 10 of Hacker News, and everybody was calling me, telling me, hey, congratulations, guys, the book was published half a year ago. What the hell, internet is really strange. Why congratulations now? But okay. Still, even with all this happiness, I told writing books, never ever again, never. So half a year after, this email happened. They asked me to write the second book, and I told, no, I will not. But then I thought, think a little bit, can you realize how many ideas do you have every day that are not being created or not being built just because you don't have time, or you don't feel that you have right tools at the time? And I had this idea 2 years ago. I wanted to really build this small application that would combine Pomodoro time management technique with small office workouts. But then I never had time for it. So I decided, well, if they will allow me, this publisher, to develop my own application during the process of explaining the technologies in the book, then I will do it, because I will be really forced to do it. Because, if you have a contract and you have deadline, then you will do it. And I said yes. And this is how ProfitOro has started. What is ProfitOro? So ProfitOro is, as I already told, is a web application that combines Pomodoro timer with office workouts. So Pomodoro time management technique consists of the idea that you need some time to concentrate on your work and then some time to rest, and not doing context switching. So you have like 20 or 25 minutes, which is called Pomodoro, that you really are concentrated on your work or on your code or whatever, and then you have 5-10 minutes of break where you check your Facebook feed, you answer emails, phone calls, whatsoever. So this is actually this timer. It's set up for 25 minutes of working Pomodoro time. And this is the beauty of Vue.js, actually, because Vue.js is all about reusable components. So for this presentation, I just copy-paste this component here, and it just works. So this is how the Pomodoro timer looks when you are working. And this is how it looks when it comes to 5 minutes of break. So instead of doing something random, you are forced to do some small workout, stretch yourself or do something else. So your body is not sitting all the time. Let's go to the technologies behind ProfitOro. So, as you probably already understood, I used Vue to develop this application, and I decided that I will not talk a lot about Vue because Vue has so great documentation and the code is on GitHub, and the book will be published. So it does not make it a lot of sense to explain, hey, Vue has components, Vue has data binding. Yeah, you already know that, you know React, it's all the same. In this talk, I want just to highlight some moments in ProfitOro and also in the book that I found maybe interesting. So I used Vue, Vuex Store, and Next. Next is a relatively new technology. So basically, Vue, as any other framework, can allow you to do all this nice stuff like server-side rendering, code splitting, routing, whatever. Just with Vue, to achieve all of this, you have to make some extra configuration, some extra steps. Maybe it's a little bit hacky sometimes. Webpack for the win, yeah. With Next, you just you don't have to do anything; it just does everything for you. So, as a small example, this is how Vue routing works. So you have your components, and then you define your router. It's very easy to understand. So you bind your path to the component. It's simple, right? With Next, it's just you have two components that reside in the pages folder, and it just works. So this is just a small example how Next can be easier than common approach in Vue applications to build routing. Or, for example, how do I tell to the application that some pages cannot be rendered or based on some condition? Next provides so-called middleware. So you have middleware directory where your middleware resides, and basically for every route change, it will check your condition and it will do something. So I have this authenticated middleware that will just redirect you to home page. And then to use it, you just tell to your component or page that it's relying on this middleware. Okay, and of course it has a lot more, as I told, server-side rendering, code splitting, really sexy configuration. So Next config, it's just one file, and you don't have index HTML. You define everything here. So for example, this is my head, and yeah, so it's very small, tiny, and easy to use. And if you want actually to dip into Webpack config, you also can override it and do something different here. Then I also was really amazed how nicely Google Firebase works with Vue, because Vue is reactive in Firebase as well. And also because I am not a backend engineer and I didn't want to write some extensive backend, I decided to use Firebase because it provides me a backend as a service, and I don't have to do anything. I just use an API. So authentication, data storage, real-time database, even hosting with the SSL support, it's everything provided just out of Blue, and you don't have to do anything, just use your APIs. So for example, for the authentication, I have this Vuex action that uses Firebase. API, so just .auth, and then you tell it sign in with email and password, and you give email and password, and it just authenticates your user. And then how does it work in your views? So this is, we import actions from UX Store, and then we just call it on the button click, and it will authenticate the user. So this is about Firebase, and if you want to check what it does more, you just go, and it also has really, really great documentation, and API is just awesome. As for authentication, the same is with database support. So basically, we have an API very similar to this. So it's Firebase.database, and then you create reference, and you bind this reference to your state, and then you just use it as any other state in your components. And once you change something in the database, it's immediately propagated to your views, and other way around as well. Then very interesting thing that I used, it's Jest. So you, even if you create some really, really great software, you cannot call it great before you test it, right? Because the testing will show you that your software actually sucks. And for testing ProfitOro, I decided to use Jest because it's something new. Facebook guys are really great. They don't sleep. They create new things. And Jest was, I guess that it was originally created for React, but it turns out that it works with everything. I struggled a bit with some mocking of Firebase objects, but then mocking is great, and yeah, a bit of configuration and it works. And yeah, I figured out that Jest is great. It's timer mocking functions, it's mocking functions itself. It's really awesome. But the very interesting thing that I found out about Jest is this snapshot testing. So, do you know what is snapshot testing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, snapshot testing basically is somehow your components or your views produce some output that will be rendered on your browser. And once your application reaches some stability, you don't want for this output to be messed up with your code. Because it's already stable, it has to be like this. So what you do, you use this method of Jest to match snapshot, and when you call it for the first time, it will create a small snapshot of your rendered output, and it will store it in the special folder for your snapshots. Every time when you run tests, it will compare the new snapshot with your old snapshot, and it will throw an error if they differ. And then you can check if they differ because you actually meant it, or it differs because you really screwed up. It was at first it was not so easy for me to understand why would I screw up my output, but then what happened to me? I had a separate branch to write these tests, and then I decided to rebase on top of master, and somehow I did something wrong probably, but the old code of my templates ended up in my new branch. And then I ran tests, and they threw error, and why? And then I checked out my snapshots, and they were different, and then I realized that I actually screwed up with my rebase. So it was really handy. Yeah. When we are talking about Firebase, I told that Firebase provides hosting and easy deployment. To deploy with Firebase, you just run a Firebase deploy command on your console, and it's great. It just goes there, and it's there, and you don't need to SSH to your server and copy-paste files and I don't know, or use Git for your deployment. So it's very nice, but still you don't want to do it every time when you create something new. So for this, you need some CI/CD support. And in this book, for ProfitOra, I used Circle CI, and it was, I discovered for me these nice pipelines. So basically, you can create staging environment in Firebase. And you just tell to your Circle CI configuration that first you run tests, you deploy to staging environment, and then wait until I approve so you can deploy to production. And Circle CI's configuration is so simple and so easy to use that it's also just works. You push to master and you have everything, doing everything without your intervention until you decide to deploy to production. You just click the button. Yeah, so I told about Firebase. Next, a little bit about Vue integration with all this stuff. And one of my favorite parts of ProfitOro is this timer, because this timer is just SVG. And at some point, I realized that these things are just attributes, and in Vue we can have this bind attributes to data, and if we change data, they will change. So why don't to use this fantastic thing to create this timer? Can you see that? That the segment is approaching to the end. So basically, when I realized that I can change attributes of an SVG just like I change in some inputs, it was like so fantastic for me. And actually, I figured out that my epiphany was not epiphany, because this is being already used on Vue.js Conf. I saw this great girl called Sarah. I don't remember her last name, but she is very famous in our world by creating very great animations using SVG and Vue.js. So I thought, yeah, I do just like expert do. Great. So basically, I used this is an SVG for timer, so it has two circles and it has some path, and this path has its description, where M stands for move to, L stands to line 2, and A is arc. And very interesting thing of this arc is this X and Y properties. X and Y properties actually define where arc will end. So how do we change them so they correspond to the timer being actually count down? It's trigonometry, right? It's easy to calculate. We calculate x with this function, we calculate y with this function, and then we use computed view properties to define the path property of the SVG. And how do we actually change this angle? This angle is a property passed from other component that just that has the set timeout function, and then it just change the angle with this function every time, and it passes the angle as a property to this component, and then it just works, as you can see. Now that I already finished the book, if you ask me, was it actually worth it? You spent so many time, you did so many things, there were a lot of nights and even weekends. yeah, it's totally worth it. First of all, I've learned a lot. I have my second book. It will be published in November. I have my ProfitOro, and I use it. The application that I thought about 2 years ago, and I never had time to implement it. So now I can use it. I actually use it during the work. Of course, I don't do some very difficult thing because my coworker would find it probably strange, but I do some stretching, easy stuff. And when I'm at home, I'm doing some more complicated workouts. And it's nice. You did something, you created something, and I will have this book, and I can share my knowledge. So yeah, a big win. So what I want to... Wait. I'm sorry. Thank you. So, as a conclusion, what I want to tell with this, it was not a presentation really about technologies, because technologies and tools and frameworks this time are so many, and you just choose what is more appropriate for you, and you learn new things, and you have your knowledge. And if you ever think, can I share my knowledge, and then you maybe think, maybe I'm not enough expert, why will I write a book or talk about something, I am not enough guru. You're not. You have this knowledge. You have unique knowledge. And please don't keep it just for yourself. Share it with people. Just do it. And if you are in doubt how to do it nicely, talk to us. We at EdEra, we help people. We build a bridge between knowledge possessors and people who really want to have this knowledge. Thank you.